I don't know how you guys feel, but I enjoy Thanksgiving leftovers, but by about day 3, I'm looking for something a little bit different. Let's get creative with these. This week we are doing Thanksgiving leftover recipes, but if you do not have leftover Thanksgiving turkey, that is okay. Every single one of these recipes can be modified with chicken, rotisserie chicken, ham, whatever kind of protein you like. Tonight we are going to make a skillet pot pie. This is a great way to use leftover turkey, leftover chicken, rotisserie chicken, things like that. I'm gonna start this recipe by getting everything chopped. If you're using onion, you're gonna need a small onion. You need about 1 large carrot, and we're gonna dice this up. We are also gonna dice up 1 stalk of celery. Now I'm gonna be adding some things to this that the recipe doesn't call for, but I know our family will enjoy. So I'm gonna add a couple of diced mushrooms. The recipe does call for 1 medium russet potato diced. We're gonna dice that up as well. Okay, we've got our vegetables chopped and prepped, and we're moving over to the stove because pretty much everything else is gonna happen over here. I made biscuits from a recipe that I have used several times from Old World Home, Hillary over at Old World Home. I will have her channel and the recipe to the biscuits listed in my description box if you're curious. There are 5 ingredients. It's so easy to make, and I thought that I had a can of biscuits and I didn't. So it was so easy to just make these, way easier than going to the grocery store. I am turning the heat over here, and I'm gonna add a 1/2 stick of butter or 1/4 cup of butter. We're gonna get that melting. And while that is melting, I'm going to preheat my oven to 375. Here on medium-high heat, I'm gonna pour in those vegetables. And these are gonna cook for about 5 minutes. While these are cooking, I am gonna go ahead and add a little bit of salt and pepper to them, make sure they have good flavor. And these are cooking on medium-high heat. To sprinkle the vegetables with 1/4 cup of flour and then slowly stir in our 2 cups of chicken broth, chicken stock, whatever it is that you are using. You also want to take your spoon while you're stirring this together and kind of scrape the bottom, because if there's any of the potatoes or anything like that got stuck to the bottom, it's actually going to have really good flavor there, and you're going to bring that up into your sauce. All right, now my skillet is actually rather small. It's one of the smaller cast iron skillets. The recipe calls for 2 cups of milk. We'll see if 2 cups are going to fit in here. All right, we are gonna let this cook for a couple of minutes, and this is gonna allow it to thicken up, probably 3 to 4 minutes. Our oven is ready, as you can hear. I'm gonna add some rosemary, and if I had fresh rosemary, I would do about a tablespoon, but we're gonna do about a teaspoon since this is dried. I actually have fresh thyme, so we're gonna add some of that as well. That's probably around a teaspoon or so. Stir all this in together, and then we're gonna start adding in the turkey, your leftover turkey. A great option if you are making this not as a leftover Thanksgiving meal is rotisserie chicken. You need about 2 cups. I've got some melted butter here that I added some rosemary to. You could add all different kinds of herbs, but we're gonna brush the tops of our biscuits with these. Now, I just made a half order or a half recipe of these biscuits. You may want to make a full recipe. I just knew how big my cast iron skillet was. It's not a very big one, so I thought it would be best just to half that. This is going in our 375-degree oven for 20 to 25 minutes. Okay, let me be honest with you guys. I have been scared of pot pie, but not because I'm scared to make it, but because there's two things that my husband doesn't like. You guys know it's onions. Now I'm gonna pause for just a second while you guys in the comments guess what the next thing is that he doesn't like. It's peas. I have avoided pot pie our entire marriage for this reason, but I will tell you, we all loved this recipe. So obviously I left out the peas and I left out the onions, still very delicious, but you could add those in if those are flavors that you guys enjoy. And I think this is just one of those things where if there are certain vegetables that you like, add them in there. If you know you're gonna enjoy them, go ahead and add them in. Like green beans is a great option. Broccoli is a great option. All these types of things, throw them in there into a pot pie and you're gonna get great flavor. Tonight for dinner, we are making a turkey, feta, and cranberry pizza. Okay, before we get started on this, we do need to preheat the oven to 400 degrees and make sure that is ready to go. Now, you could easily make this recipe into more like a flatbread style. You could make it with naan bread if you don't have pizza dough. There's so many different ways that you can go about this recipe. I have these little individual pie pan things where you make little individual pizzas. So we are going to make individual pizzas tonight, but also you can absolutely just turn this into one large pizza. There isn't a whole lot to prep for this recipe because I bought my pizza dough. So I am just gonna slice up my garlic. I'm gonna take 1 clove of garlic and I'm gonna slice it very thin. I'm only using 1 clove because I don't think that the kids will want the garlic on theirs. So I'm gonna leave it off of their pizzas. And then the other thing that I need to do is shred up some mozzarella cheese. Aside from that, everything is really being pulled out of our leftovers. So I don't have to do a whole lot of chopping for this. I'm gonna take this pizza dough and divide it into 4 different portions. So just cutting it in quarters, and then I'm gonna stretch it out to the size of these individual pizza pans. Now, if you were using onion, which you know we don't do here, but if you were using onion, you would probably wanna go ahead and saute those over on your stovetop. So I would melt a little bit of butter and then cut up some onions, whatever amount of onions you and your family would enjoy, and saute those first. I've got my pizza dough out on each one of these little individual pizza pans, and we are gonna take this store-bought Alfredo sauce. You could make Alfredo sauce if you want to. This is just so convenient and so easy. And you're just gonna take a little bit and spread it over the top of each one, or if you're making one full pizza, you would spread this all over the top. The recipe calls for about a ½ cup of Alfredo. On to 2 of these, I'm gonna add these little garlic slices and just make sure that they're evenly dispersed all over these pizzas. Now, this is something that I like to do when we make pizza, but you absolutely do not have to do it in this way. I like to put a little bit of a layer of cheese underneath my toppings and then add cheese to the top. I don't know, it's something about like the way that it kind of just forms together and it all kind of works together. You would use about a cup of turkey. You can absolutely use rotisserie chicken here too if you don't have leftover turkey, but this is something that you want to make. And I'm just gonna make sure it's shredded finely and spread it out all over the top of each one of these pizzas. And then we're gonna add feta cheese. And I'm not measuring this at all. The recipe does call for approximately a 1/4 cup. We're probably gonna use a little more than a 1/4 cup because we really like feta cheese in this house. And then we're gonna top the whole thing with the rest of the mozzarella cheese. We shredded about a ½ cup or so of mozzarella cheese. The recipe only called for a 1/4 cup, but I think that's crazy. You have to have a lot of cheese on pizza. These are going in the oven, which is preheated at 400 degrees, and they're gonna cook for right in between 20 and 25 minutes. Those pizzas are in the oven, and now we are going to make our cranberry vinaigrette. This is so easy. We're taking leftover cranberry sauce. All you need is about a ½ cup. I'm not even measuring this. We're just putting roughly a ½ cup into a blender cup. I'm gonna add roughly 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar and then a pinch of salt. You can absolutely use pepper as well. And then about a teaspoon of olive oil. And then I am going to blend all of this up in our blender so that that is ready to go when the pizza comes out of the oven. Okay, our pizzas are done. I'm going to slice these. I am going to drizzle these with that cranberry vinaigrette. I feel like this is just going to elevate these flavors so much. I love the fact that there's a lot of whites in this, and then you add that cranberry vinaigrette and it adds like this richness of reddish kind of pinkish color, but it needs some green. So I'm gonna add the parsley just because I feel like it is gonna make it look really pretty. Here we have it, the roasted turkey, feta, and cranberry pizzas. All right, I'm just gonna let you know right now that you need to go ahead and just reserve a little bit of your turkey from Thanksgiving and make this recipe because it's very good. I really liked it. I ended up actually pouring more of that cranberry vinaigrette over the top because I thought it was delicious. Tonight's recipe could not be easier. We are making leftover turkey and cranberry bundles. This is one of those recipes where if you also happen to have leftover stuffing, I would throw some of that in there too. You can put whatever you want in these. We are just gonna go turkey and cranberry, but feel free to add that. I've got 1 can of crescent rolls open. I'm just laying them out, and now we're gonna get the turkey and the cranberry sauce out of the refrigerator and start layering this. You want to put your ingredients at the top portion of the crescent roll. So get it right up here at the top. And I wanna make sure mine have a good amount of ingredients in them. So they're gonna look a little overstuffed, and that is okay. Okay, we're gonna add some of the cranberry to each one. And this is really just not a set amount for me. This is just looking at them and kind of seeing what I think my family would like. Take the tail of each one of these and just kind of fold it under because you want to be able to see everything. So I don't need to fold it up in the same way that I would if this were like pigs in blanket or something like that. My oven is currently preheated to 375 degrees. These are going in the oven for about 9 to 12 minutes. While that's in the oven, I am gonna chop up a little bit of parsley, and this is really just for garnish. It's gonna make it look really pretty. As we assemble tonight's dinner, you are going to need 2 additional ingredients. You are gonna need your leftover gravy, and you are gonna need leftover mashed potatoes, which let's just all agree, we have leftover mashed potatoes because everybody has that Aunt Sue or Aunt Sally that brings enough mashed potatoes to feed the entire US forces. I know you're gonna have all the leftover mashed potatoes. All right, we're gonna drizzle the top of these with the gravy. And then I'm gonna garnish with that parsley because that's just gonna make it really pretty. We just finished dinner. These were very good. Obviously, major carb load, but very, very good. My husband actually said, all of these Thanksgiving leftovers have been delicious, but he thinks that this one was his favorite. So if you're looking for Thanksgiving leftover recipes, you might wanna try this one. This is something that I grew up with. An aunt of mine made it all the time because it was my cousin's favorite. There are so many different variations of this. We have just always called it chicken casserole. I am gonna cut this recipe in half. It does typically make a 9x13 pan, but we don't need quite that much. So we're gonna do an 8x8 version. We've got 2 large chicken breasts here in this pot. I am boiling them so that we can shred up that chicken. We're going to melt about a half stick of butter. I'm not measuring this exactly, just approximately. I'm hoping that I got the right stuffing. You know, there are so many different kinds, but I'm pretty sure this is the one that my aunt told me to get. She said the Pepperidge Farm classic stuffing. This one is herb stuffed. Now, we are only gonna be using about half of this bag. I'm having to refer to the recipe that she texted me. So we're adding in the melted butter, and we will mix all of that together. Now what she does is save some of the stock from cooking the chicken and add it in here. We're gonna be adding bone broth into here. So we are making a few adjustments just based on the way that we normally eat things. Probably about a cup and a half or so of this chicken bone broth, and we're going to get this to a thin consistency. That's what it says, thin consistency. Start with that, see what it looks like. Oh, we forgot to preheat the oven. You're gonna preheat your oven to 350. Okay, there's no remaining liquid. It's all soaked in. I don't know that I would call this a thin consistency though, so let's just add a touch more. I feel like that's probably what she was talking about. I am gonna spray the baking dish. And then all of the stuffing goes at the bottom of the pan here. We're just creating a layer of the stuffing. Okay, I think that our chicken is done. So I'm gonna shred it up. I'm just gonna use my KitchenAid mixer because that makes it so easy to shred. I did season the water that we cooked this in, but I'm gonna add a little more seasoning here. And this is not part of the recipe, so you guys know I always have to change things up a little bit. I just can't ever do anything standard. I'm going to add a little bit of our favorite Kevin's seasoning, some garlic powder, maybe a half teaspoon, and same with the onion powder, about a half teaspoon. And I'm also gonna add a touch of Italian seasoning, again, right around a half teaspoon. We can mix this, and that's just gonna shred up the chicken for us. I'm following her exact instructions. She does this in layers apparently. So the chicken goes on top and then there's a creamy layer that goes after that. I kind of feel like you could mix the sour cream and the cream of in here and that could be your layer. But I'm gonna do it the way that she always did. Let's change it just a little bit. It'll be all right. I mean, I have to make adjustments. I make my own cream of, so that's what this is. But if you're making the full recipe, you need about 1.5 cans of cream of chicken, cream of mushroom, whatever one you wanna use. She uses cream of chicken and she uses 1.5 cans for the full recipe. Now, I'm not gonna add the whole can in here. I'm just gonna add a little bit of the can. And we're gonna add a little bit of Greek yogurt too, because you guys know we use Greek yogurt instead of sour cream. Okay, so I'm just adding a couple of tablespoons, but we are gonna make the layer that's gonna go on top. We're just experimenting with a different version here. Now we can take the chicken and it's gonna go all over the top. Spread this all over. Okay, now we're gonna make the mixture that goes onto the top here. I'm gonna use the can of cream of. And for the size that we're making, we need about 8 ounces of sour cream, or in our case, we're using Greek yogurt. So this is definitely a less fat version than with sour cream, but you can do it either way. The taste of sour cream and Greek yogurt is pretty similar, especially if you get a full fat version of Greek yogurt. This is non-fat, but you guys can do it however you want. It's totally fine. I have another way we're changing it up. I gotta add some green. So we're gonna add some parsley into this mixture, and I'm gonna add some on top for garnish. It's just too tan, too white. It needs more things. Pretty good, and then we'll add some more to the top, which will be very nice. Okay, so let's add this layer here. I really hope I'm doing this right. I mean, I was never really interested in watching or paying attention when anyone in my family actually made this, so let's read this together and see if you guys interpret it the exact same way. Put the mixture, meaning the dressing mixture that we made, into a 9x13 casserole dish. Add the shredded chicken on top, mix the sour cream and cream of chicken soup, and spread on top. Sprinkle the saved stuffing overall. Oh, so we need the stuffing back out. We're gonna sprinkle that over the top. Bake at 350 degrees for 45 minutes. I do remember there being a nice crunch on the top. We're gonna wait till after this comes out of the oven to add a little bit more parsley garnish. Let's give it a go. It's going in for 45 minutes at 350 degrees. All right, let's see if this tastes like I remember. Obviously, we made those few adjustments, so it might not be exactly the same. It does taste like I remember. I'm sorry that Ashley, my cousin, is not here to eat this right now because this was her favorite. It's interesting because my husband's mom makes a very similar dish that she calls chicken stretcher, and they call it that because it would go a long way, so it would stretch a long way. Very similar flavors, very similar taste. Obviously, we tried to make ours a little bit more healthy than what maybe the way that it was made when I was growing up, just based on the Greek yogurt and the homemade cream but very good flavors. It tastes really fresh, but also really hearty at the same time. It's just like, it's so nostalgic. I think the thing that I'm probably most excited about with my Thanksgiving turkey is making the bone broth when we are done with it. I'm going to show you how I make my bone broth. This is done with a chicken, but it is the exact same way with your turkey. Do not skip this part. This is some of the best nutrition that you're going to get from your turkey right here. We're going with the crock pot. That's what we're going to do. Bone broth. That's what I wanted to say. So let's get all the bones into the crock pot. At this point for flavoring, I will add in whatever we have. And it just so happens that we have a lot of carrots. So I literally keep it really simple and just toss them in there, okay? It's really just adding some extra flavor. So let's do, I think 2 carrots should be good here. I've got some celery. This was in the fridge. I had it for a recipe the other day, so just go ahead and break that up and throw it in there as well. You can add in onion, which I actually have an onion over there. Maybe I should throw some in there. This is just adding extra flavor, guys, okay? So now what we want to do is take this and fill it with water. So just above the bones is where I'm going to add water. I personally like to add salt to mine. Depends on how you are planning to use your bone broth. I have made very, very, very mild bone broth before, and that's because we actually make a hot chocolate with bone broth that is delicious, but you don't want it to be too salty. So I've done it without the vegetables as well from just an organic plain chicken that didn't have all the rotisserie flavoring on it. I personally like to cook mine on low. We're gonna do this for about 10 to 12 hours. It does take a while. Okay, now that the bone broth is done, we are going to get all of the bones and all those vegetables out. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty careful about this process because this is like precious stuff right here, okay? Oh my gosh, why do I not have words right now? I'm using the strainer to get out all the bones and everything, and then it's going into a pretty big measuring cup. And then I'll add it to a container that can be stored. So a container like a really big mason jar works, anything that you have that can store liquids, and you know they'll be safe in the freezer, whatever it is that you do with it. All right, now these can be put in the fridge, they can be put in the freezer. One thing I will say is do not fill them up all the way. When you put them in the freezer, they will expand and it will be too much. So my next step with this bone broth is to buy big mason jars because the little ones just don't work for me. I need much larger ones for how much we use bone broth. So my little ones, we're just not doing it. So we're gonna use these this time. Maybe if I can get the lid on properly. You should also know, so that you're not alarmed, bone broth is typically when it's cold in the fridge, or, well, in the freezer, obviously it's frozen, but if it comes out of the fridge, it's most likely gonna be more gelatinous than any of the broth that you've purchased in the store before. Don't let that alarm you if your bone broth is not super liquidy and it's more like a gelatin. Our verse this week comes from 1 John 4:7. Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God. Everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. I hope that you guys enjoyed today's video. If you're new here, I would love if you would subscribe and stick around. And if you need more inspiration in the kitchen, you need to check out the video above where you are gonna find even more. You're gonna love these recipes. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great week.